I was a man who was chain bound by comfort, passivity, and pride. And through all of those places and fire in my life, God has used that all to forge me into something greater.
This is Manlihood, the podcast for men who want to rise up and live with purpose. With your host, Josh Hatcher, this show is here to help you level up as a husband, father, leader, and man, with real conversations and strategies to help you in every area of your life.
Gentlemen, welcome back to Manlihood. This is season 9. This is where we help men become better husbands, better fathers, better leaders, better men. So today's guest has an incredible, powerful redemption story. A story that, honestly, it'll just leave you riveted. Like, you're like, whoa, 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 the whole time. My mind was just blown as I heard the way his life has radically changed. And so I want to encourage you to listen into this because I think there's some really good stuff. His name is Steve Baumgartner. He's the founder of Fireforge Leader and the Forge Knights Order, which is a movement of men that are called to awaken, arise, and lead with courage and conviction. He's a husband, a father of 8 kids. Yeah, that's a lot of kids. He's a grandfather, and he's been through it. He's going to talk about abuse, addiction, violence, and despair, and how that turned for him to faith and forgiveness and brotherhood and a healthy and strong marriage where his purpose and mission were forged. Listen, don't we all want that? We all want that, right? This episode is powerful, so I want to make sure you tune into it. Before we get into Steve's story, I want to make sure that you check out my new book, Fight Like Hell, a journal for men who won't back down. I love it. Steve has shared about this book as well. He's been a good friend to me, helping promote stuff, and so I appreciate him sharing it. Make sure you check it out. The links are in the show notes. You'll see it on Amazon. Check out bonus features. Guys, we have bonus features available as well, which you can get those on YouTube or Spotify by joining Manlihood Plus. It's not a lot of money, but it's a subscription service that makes all the other subscription services look stupid because we're giving you good stuff. So make sure you check out Manlihood Plus. Also, don't forget to join the Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave. We'd love to have you there. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Here's our conversation with Steve Baumgartner. Steve Baumgartner, how you doing today, man?
I am doing fantastic, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I knew a Baumgartner when I was in like middle school. I think I beat him up, but he asked for it. So
Are you going to guess that guy, rather than being spelled with a T at the end, it was a D? They all have lower IQs than the T's.
I'm pretty sure it was a D. So
That's a long-standing joke, by the way, in the Baumgartner clan.
yeah, are they? Was it Baum? It was probably Baumgartner, right? Originally, and then they misspelled it. Is that how that happened?
I'm going to guess when they came across the pond, right? So I'm loosely related to James Gardner, right?
Oh.
When his family came across the pond, they wanted to Americanize it and dropped off the bomb, right? Because that was fully German and, just Americanize the rest. So I'm going to guess they're all related, but, it's kind of like Smith over in Germany. It means tree farmer. So,
Oh, well, that makes sense. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, so there are a few different families of Hatchers here, and there's always stories about how we're connected and not connected, and and the name crosses the race barrier, and so someone said, well, does that mean your family was slave owners? No, it's actually because we helped a runaway slave, and then they took on our name because we look after them, and that was the whole thing. Like, he was so, but people get weird these days whenever you start bringing up those stories. So,
and you're up in Pennsylvania, right?
yeah, I'm in Bradford, Pennsylvania, which is home of Zippo lighters and case knives, and it's in the middle of nowhere, dude. It's awesome. It's beautiful up here.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is a nice place until you get around, city life, right? Much
Yeah,
like
well,
anywhere.
I've been telling everybody this for years that there are two types of people in the world, and they are country people and city people, and you
Right.
can tell that by the election maps. You can tell that by the way they treat people, and you can tell that by who's going to win if it ever hits the fan. So, but
Really, when it comes down to it, right? The city people, they always, I'm sorry to get political on you, but they always go left because they really just don't want to take care of people themselves, right?
I'm not sure why. I'm still trying to crack that. I mean, I lean right, and I have a lot of friends on the left, and I personally think our political parties are all messed up, and neither of them actually represent the people. Uh, and I'm also convinced that I know we're not getting into politics. We'll start off with it because it's fun. I'm also convinced that none of us really like our guy. That we just convince
I agree.
ourselves we like our guy, so that we feel better about having to vote for our guy that we don't like.
I had to come to terms with it myself, but I'm not a cultist either. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but man, politics is a mess. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It makes me sick.
I, I agree. We should just be talking about what's best for people, right?
Exactly.
That's what it should come down to. You know, you, I was actually working in a manufacturing plant when the latest round of immigration came through
Hmm.
and immigration reform, excuse me.
Right.
But we had to let 81 people go who were legal the day before, right? They were legal the day before. It wasn't that they were illegal. It was that they had their citizenship revoked. So, you look at that, right? These are real people. And I get the whole going after, uh, you know, people who are murderers and, bad criminals and all that stuff. That's not these people. These people are going to work to provide a better family or a life for their family, right? And you take just that one thing, the immigration reform, right? Everybody wants it. Everybody wants the rules to be correct, right? If we could just take the same amount of effort that we put into the division tactics into solving the dang problem, we'd already be there,
Yeah.
right? Simplify the system. I care that no one comes into the country and rapes my wife, kills any of my kids, isn't dealing drugs, and are paying taxes, right? I mean, you get those four things knocked down. I don't care if they know who the 13th president was. I would have to look in a book, right?
Yeah. I don't even care if they speak English as long as they speak enough English to get by. Right. Like,
Exactly.
right. So,
Exactly.
I it's funny. I don't talk about politics a lot because people get mad at me. But the honest truth is, you know, that's one of those issues where the whole problem is created because two sides of it can't accept the fact that two things can be true at the same time.
Right.
Bad guys cross the border that we need to get rid of. Good people are here that we need to come up with a solution for. Two things are true at the same time, but one side only holds on to one thing, and the other side only holds on to the other thing, and both are true. So, but honestly, that's life, dude. That's like all of life. Like we're always arguing about something because we can't handle the fact that sometimes two things are true.
Well, we even have it in Christianity, right? If you look at John 8, everybody wants to point to, not casting the stone. But there's two other portions of that verse, right? There's the place where Jesus knelt down, wrote in the dirt, connected with the woman. And then he also told her to sin no more.
And the story isn't in some of the earliest manuscripts, which adds a whole other wrinkle into the equation.
Mm.
Now, I think it happened, right? But I'm just saying that's some of the that's just to throw it out there. It's another thing that people
Yep.
just relax and take it for what it is. And listen to the whole thing before you jump.
Agreed. Agreed. No, it's, I like the way that you put that about, two things can be true at the same time. And that's where we got to get back to as a nation, as a people, as, just everybody, right? we couldn't live that way inside our own marriages. Why do we think we can live that way out in society?
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of people try to live that way in their marriages, and then it tanks. You know.
Yeah, that does describe most of the divorce rate out there, Josh, for sure.
So, Steve, since we had our deep conversation right off the bat, tell me about the work you're doing with Fireforge Leader.
Yeah, man. So I'll start with, there's this friend of mine. His name's Sean Corcoran, and he runs Men for Life, which is a pro-life movement. And he challenged me one day that, when you had Gladiator movie, right? And he's standing there in front of the emperor, and the emperor demands to know his name, and he turns around and he recites that, I can't even recite it, but anyways, that we should all,
Right. I
yeah.
got it. Yeah.
I don't watch TV, so
All right.
we go back, 10 years, right? So I've been thinking about that. So I'm going to give you that version of it, Josh. And I got to look over here at my notes, but my name is Steve Baumgartner. I'm a son of the living God. I'm a husband to my queen and a father of 8. I'm the founder of the Forge, the Knight's Order, and the keeper of the sacred code within that. So I was a man who was chain bound by comfort, passivity, and pride. And through all of those places and fire in my life, God has used that all to forge me into something greater. So now what I'm doing is I'm leading a crusade, and people will get all freaked out about that, right? But I'm leading a crusade, and it's not against flesh and blood, right? It's against the lies that men are told, the lies that steal a man's strength, silence his voice, and suffocate his house. So that's the crusade that I'm going on. So that's really what the Forge is it's a crusade. It's a battleground for men who, don't want to die with their sword still sheathed. And I use that in, just as a metaphor too. They're not truly living their lives. So that's what it is, man. That's what it is.
So I've got a bunch of questions after that, and the first one is
Absolutely.
8 kids.
8 kids. Yeah. 5 to 31.
Wow. 5. Wow.
So let me tell you the answer that you're going to ask the question to.
Okay.
Yes, I know how that happens. And yes, I love the practice. When you ask the God of life if you should have more kids, don't be surprised on the answer, right?
That's amazing. Children are a blessing from the Lord. I mean, that's what the Bible says. So, and blessed
Absolutely.
is he. Blessed is he. They're like an arrow, and blessed is he with his quiver full of them. So that's a good thing. But
yeah, I got quiver full for sure.
Do you have grandkids?
I do. I have 2.
Awesome. Yeah, grandkids are
One
the
more
best.
longer.
Yeah, I've got 3 of those, and that's so much better than having kids. So
I don't know. So we're going to get into all this, I'm sure, Josh, but we raised our 5 that are all adults first, and then took a 17-year break and then started having kids again. So in my life, I talked about how I was forged through a ton of fire. It's absolutely true. It's not it's not hyperbole. It's there was a lot in there that I had to work through. But for me, these younger kids have been the best thing ever because it gave me a chance to redeem myself as a man and as a father of men. It's a totally different rodeo now than back then when I couldn't father worth a damn.
Which that was when you were telling me your story and you're kind of telling me about where you're at, right? That was my next question that I wanted to ask is, and I guess that makes sense, right? So tell me about those days. What was your life like then, and what happened?
Yeah, so I'm going to rewind all the way back to the beginning. This guy was born in Rockford, Illinois, I don't know if you've ever been to Rockford, but it's a lot like Chicago. It just doesn't have any of the nice stuff.
Well, I mean, Illinois is all the same. It's all cornfield and pig farms, and then the city, right?
Rockford City, just in Chicago. But uh, so I was actually born in Rockford, Illinois, and my dad was a VP of a motorcycle club. And I found out later that my mom was actually a prostitute. So these were my humble beginnings, right?
Hmm.
My father tried to kill me and my older brother 3 times that I have on record in my brain.
Hmm.
I'm sure it was more than that, but those are the 3 times that I remember because I blocked out a lot of the rest, right? The abuse and, people have had to tell me things and what have you. And these are memories that have come back in my adulthood. Anyways, when I was 4 or 5 years old, me and my older brother, we were yanked out of the household by the state. It actually wasn't for abuse. It was for neglect. And we went into foster care. So just another little core memory that came back in my adulthood was I remember at 5 years old sitting down in a foster care home and watching soft porn. So that'll come into the story a little bit later, but it's amazing when you look how God just strings the dots together. So anyways, we get adopted by an awesome Catholic family, right? Just wonderful people, absolutely fantastic. However, I was broken already. My older brother was already broken. My older brother, he went off and he had a lot of anger issues and this, that, and the other. Ended up getting a armed burglary charge when he was 17. And that was like a scared straight. He was pretty good from there. I was a little bit craftier, Josh. So I started using hardcore drugs when I was about 13. The reason why I have so many kids is I had my first wife pregnant at 17. I was also manufacturing methamphetamines, stealing, collecting money with a baseball bat, that sort of thing, by the time that I was 17. Fast forward a couple of years, I got 3 kids now with my ex-wife. And I'm 22 years old and I get arrested for manufacturing, dealing, and burglary and all sorts of different things. And I'm looking at 36 years in the pen. By the way, I'm also a Satanist at this point in time and just totally revolting against everything. So I'm sitting there.
Can I interrupt to ask you a quick question? Were you a Satanist that worshipped Satan or a Satanist that just rejected God? Just out of curiosity.
The first one, worship.
Wow.
I wouldn't say that I was heavy duty into worship. I had, Rion Sweegelar, who's the guy with Arrow. He turned Christian. I had him on my podcast and he was into, black masses and different things like that. I was more of a dabbler at that point in time. That if it would have went on, it would have gotten a lot worse, I guarantee you, because I was rejecting everything. Totally revolted. So 22 years old, I'm looking at 36 years in the pen. Just going to kind of take liberty to make this really short in this time period. But I went and told my kids goodbye, that I'd never see them again because I was looking at 36 years. I would have been past the age that I am now before I would have seen them. And my oldest boy is 31, right? And I stuck the middle finger in my ex-wife's face because I just didn't like her anyways. So I walked away from that. I was homeless for a little while. I was sitting there just doing everything that I could. I was totally obliterated. I had no plans on going back to court. And one night, and if I start crying, this one always gets me, Josh. I was 22 years old. I'm 50 now, so it's been a long time, and I still can't get past this point without crying. But so I told you I was adopted. Great parents. But I did grow up in the 80s and 90s, right? We didn't show a lot of affection or anything else like that. So I wake up and, I'm on the concrete, I'm on a sidewalk, right? And I was homeless, so I mean, this wasn't that big of a shock. But I lift my head up and it's dark outside, right? I lift my head up and I see this 1920s four square house, the 3 steps up, the green grass carpet stuff, the porch swing. And I realize this is my dad's house, right? My adopted dad's house. And it's totally dark, right? Totally dark. And that door up front, it was one of those heavy oak, 2.5, 3-inch doors, whatever it was. And then the noisiest front screen door that you could ever hear, because I tried sneaking out of it and got caught every time. Anyways, by the time that I crawled up to the top of the stairs, because I was going to tell my dad goodbye as well, I looked up again and he was standing there. And he picked me up, Josh, and it was like I was weightless. And he just wrapped his arms around me and hugged me. And I can explain it as nothing except for the only word that ever comes to mind is eternal, right? It was like this moment in time that just stopped all of time. It was infinite and endless. And that's the day that I met God. So, anyways, what was the original question? Oh,
I don't know.
this part.
Let's keep going. I want to know more of the story. Well, I want to know where this ends, man.
Yeah. So, anyways, something I just want to interject here is that if I'm going to tell you this entire story, I want everybody to know that things are not a destination, right? It's always a path. You're always just on to the next point in your story, right? I learned something new at least once a week. Oh, wow, that's another step down the road, right? Kind of like you with your, I've been watching your weight loss journey for, what's it been, over a year now, hasn't it?
Well, gosh, I've been working on it for a long time because I'll gain it and lose it and lose it and gain it. But yeah, it's definitely a journey. It's not something like where you just arrive at, oh, I'm skinny now. No, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
So anyways, my dad picks me up in this hug. One part that I didn't tell you is that we hadn't talked well, we had, but in about 5 years, we hadn't been family, right? I walked out of his house. I left his house. My mom was so hurt by how I was back then. She called it an emotional divorce. Now, my dad, he always tried to be there, right? So he would call me up and, hey, I'm picking you up for breakfast, right? We'd go down to Hy-Vee and we'd have a skillet or something I hadn't eaten for, 7 days or something. So he always tried, but it was always surface level with me because I wasn't willing to let him in, right? So this just like exploded everything. I'm just bawling. I'm just this big crybaby. I'm guessing I stayed at his house that night. I don't remember that part of the story, but I do remember sitting down at his dinner table, and he's like, "Steve, what do you want out of life?" Right? And I said, "I want to get out of this. I want to be better. I want to be something different, And I had just had this experience the night before, right? I couldn't explain it back then, but it was spiritual in nature, right? So we're sitting down and he's like, okay, if that's what you want to do, we're going to call some lawyers up. We're going to, do all that. And we did all that. My dad hired me a lawyer, all that kind of fun stuff. I stayed with him. I went to court, ended up with 2 months in a county jail and a 5-year ankle bracelet out of the deal. And the only thing that I can explain that through is the grace of God. So here we are, right? I have no clue where my ex-wife is at this point in time. I have no clue where my kids are at this point in time by the time that I get out of jail, because she just totally disappeared off from the face of the planet. So I go on, my older brother, he was working up in the northwestern part of Iowa, and he told me that I could come live up there, that he'd get me a job at the plant that he was at and what have you. And I was all, I was all about it. So I go up to Storm Lake, Iowa, or Ida Grove, Iowa, but near Storm Lake. And I start, working at this plant as a temp, what have you. I start working for myself, still wondering where my kids are at. A couple months go down the line, I get myself an apartment, and, nothing in it, right? Absolutely nothing in it. And I get this call on a Friday after, early afternoon from one of my ex-wife's friends. And I don't even know how she got my number. But she said, Steve, your kids just got taken by the state. Let that shiver run down your spine, right? And I'm like, what? Yeah, she wasn't my ex-wife at the time. She said, your wife left them at a babysitter's for 6 weeks. So I'm like furious, right? I start calling around, trying to, get any social worker on the line. Didn't even know, what was going on. Had no car, no vehicle, what have you. But I finally get the social worker on the line, and I'm like, hey, I want my kids, they shouldn't be in foster care and this, that, and the other. And just about had her there until she looked at the clock and realized it was 4:30. She's like, we're going to have to pick this back up on Monday, sir. And I'm like furious, just trying to hold it back, that masculine rage that was uncontrolled at that point in time. And it was a good thing because my dad had moved up to Minnesota while I was in jail. They were going into partial retirement, he called it. Anyways, they had moved back to Minnesota, which is where they originally came from. And I called up my dad and I told him about it. And he's like, I'll be there Monday morning. Right. And he had a job, but I'll be there Monday morning. Right. And we will go and we will get your kids. And he drove down. He was there Sunday night at 1:00 in the morning, and got a couple hours of sleep, and we drove across the state over to pick up my kids. And he helped furnish, we went down to every community action place and got a crib mattress here and a pillow here and a blanket there and what have you. Me and my 3 kids, we slept with our heads on one crib mattress for about 4 months until I could buy one bed. And then we moved to a bed. And a couple months later, anyways, fast forward, I start going to college because I realize a temp wage isn't going to pay for anything in this world. So, I went to an electronic trade school and, was trying to balance work and, school and kids and single fatherhood and all this, that, and the other. And I was playing Yahoo Pool, and I started playing with this woman that was online who happens to be upstairs right now, 20 some years later. Anyways, we met off Yahoo Pool. You remember that old stuff? Back when that was fun?
Yeah, like the old internet games. Yeah.
So I was just, I got done with my homework. I'd play a little bit of Yahoo Pool just to wind down before I went to bed every night. And it caught me my queen.
Was she any good at pool?
No. Real or fake. It didn't matter. So she was in the middle of a marriage at that point in time that she had just separated as well. So now we got 2 broken people coming together. And that's the next part of the journey, right? Is I believe that day when my father gave me that hug, that God plucked the addiction from my soul, but he left me with every behavior to work through. So all of the root issues that were there, the abandonment, the hurt, the anger, the, angst, all that stuff, I still had to work throughout the years. And that's where I say it's a journey, right? It's not a destination. So fast forward a couple of years, we lived together for a little while. I wasn't strong in my faith. I believed in God now, but I wasn't strong in my faith. She started really getting into her faith and realized that we were living in sin and all that. And, recommended that we got married and, what have you. And I'm like, sure, whatever, it's just a piece of paper, I thank God for that woman every day. Right. And I still had all this anger and all these things that I hadn't worked through. So I was starting to become more and more emotionally abusive to her. I got physically abusive with my kids and her kids. So our 8 kids, they're blended. We have the 5 older ones. It's 3 and 2. I was abusive to those kids when they were growing up. My 31-year-old, he left the house the same age that I left the house for a different reason. It was because he saw the demon that was living in me at that point in time when I had him picked up off from his feet by his throat. So there was all that, right? I was just living that same legacy that I took from my dad. I'm not going to say that I was left with, because it was a choice to pick it up, right? It was a choice. So fast forward a few more years, and me and my wife were on the edge of divorce, right? It was totally collapsing. And my wife, she's into her faith now, right? I'm still lukewarm. And she is just totally against the divorce thing because she knows it's not biblical. But she finally gives in one day and she goes, Steve, I will sign those divorce papers if you do one last thing for me. And I'm like, sure, whatever. I'll do anything, right? Because I thought she was the problem at that point. And she goes, I want you to meet me at this motel on Friday afternoon. I'm like, oh, this is weird, right? So I do it just to honor that commitment. And she got me to a marriage encounter retreat.
Tricky.
So I'm at this marriage encounter retreat, just angry as all get out, right? That she tricked me into this. And somewhere during the middle of that, man, you remember the stories that we'd hear about people sticking needles in the frog's ear and squiggling it up, right? That's what I felt like God did to my heart. There was some point during the middle of that, and I'm not a crier, Josh. I have never been a crier, but man, there was more liquid that came out of my eyes that weekend than I have in my body today. And I drink a gallon of water every day, right? I cried like a baby. And it was just God helping me through that next step, right? Show me that, yeah, you got to work on yourself, but you also got to work on your marriage and your heart, all that. So fast forward a couple of years, we're going semi okay. And I'm going to speed it up here a little bit for you. Sorry, this has been taking so long.
Yeah,
But
all your time you want, man.
So, things were going semi okay. We were getting along better. I'd figured out how to hold my anger back, right? I don't know if I'd really grown, but I'd figured out how to control it better. And, we're living here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I get this corporate gig. It's the gig I've always wanted, right? I got a fleet of 42 plants that I'm looking after for maintenance and reliability. It was my dream job at the time, right? For like 10 years, it was my dream job. It's all I had ever wanted. And I thought really my place in the household was simply to provide. So I took this job. I didn't even think about it. I'd fly out on Monday and I'd fly back on Friday, right? And I would binge watch my marriage and my kids over the weekend. And there was one Friday I come home and my wife and kids weren't there. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Right. So I text her. I'm like, where are you guys at? She's like, oh, we're getting groceries. We'll be home in 45 minutes. So I'm like, cool, I'll go down and do bills real quick, down to my office, do bills. And then that way it won't take away from the weekend, right? So I'm going through, and at that point in time, we had this agreement. I had this agreement with her that she would tell me when she'd spend money, right? I say we had this agreement, but it was really me. That if we spent over $50, that we'd let each other know, because I was trying to pay down bills and be financially free, because that's all that mattered in life, right? So I'm going through, and you know how you do bills, you're into your bank account, you're into the bills, so on and so forth. And I see this charge, and it's like, I don't know, $400 or something. And it's from Costco, right? And I just get furious, because she's just done disrespected me now, right? I had built all these stories up about how she disrespected me. And she come home and she's got those 47 bags of plastic, because women can't take 2 trips to the dang car. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know. I know.
The little kids go scampering off to the toy room, right? And she goes into the kitchen, and before she can drop those bags down on the floor, she's got her, back to me, to the counter, because she's put some up on the counter. I just lied into her, Josh. And I am just, I can't believe you disrespected me like that. I can't believe you know the situation I'm talking about, right? And that anger just came right back. And I'm 6'3", just to give you a little bit of perspective. My wife is like 5'1", and I think a quarter, because they measure that when you're that short.
Right.
Anyways,
definitely intimidating then.
yeah, definitely intimidating. I mean, I'm broad-shouldered, and all that sort of thing. Back then, I was actually 320 pounds. I weigh 240 now, so I was even bigger back then. But I remember that finger, and she's damn near jumping off the ground to point my face. This is a woman who is very good-natured. Everything in her heart is good-natured, right? And she's got that finger in my face, and she goes, "Steve, how dare you talk to me like that?" And I'm, "Ooh, okay, I'm listening." And she goes, "You fly out of here on Monday and come home on Fridays. You don't even live here. You're a stranger in this house. How dare you talk to me like that?" And man, my heart cracked that day. So the cool part about that, right, is that it broke me open for the next leg of that journey. So it probably wasn't 2 weeks later, the company that I was working for hired Jocko Willink. Probably heard that name before, I'm sure.
Extreme ownership.
Yeah. So I got to do multiple workshops with him and Dave Burke and a couple other people from Echelon Front when they were still a smaller company. And man, this whole idea of extreme ownership, I was off to the races, because my heart was open to it, right? And I used it at work. I used it with myself and all sorts of things. But I realized that, after working through it quite a bit, it helped me lose 80 pounds. It helped me do a lot of different things, because I started taking ownership. But I was starting to realize that you can use those same principles at home, right? And that it's very, very powerful. But Jocko, he's got his stuff, right? But there's an end to it, just like everybody else's. So I started searching online, and we both know Ryan Mickler. I ended up running across Ryan Mickler in the Order of Man. And I'm like, well, this is cool, because this broadens it out. This broadens it out and into my family and, quite a few different areas. So I started working in his Iron Council, and I learned a lot about brotherhood and the end of isolation and just all sorts of great things in that organization. I actually, worked up the channels to the chief operations officer in that organization. So I was actually helping Ryan run the business for a while. But great organization, by the way. Can't say a bad thing about it. No longer a part of it just because I was ready for that next leg of my journey. And I'm like, okay, like most coaching, there should be an end point anyway. So I thought that I was there. And I thought the next leg of my journey was, okay, start working with your family and, these sorts of things. And I separated from the Iron Council. But then I had people step into my life from counter human trafficking organizations. And it was through my podcast to start with. But then I really started getting involved with these people and, going to conferences and going on hunts and helping people out, in different cities and what have you. And I really got to experience what service and living beyond yourself looks like, right? I got to see Jesus washing the feet in other people. Because I tell you what, in these kind of organizations, they all do it for the passion of people. Because there's nothing, these people fight demons every day, right? I mean, absolute demons is what they're working with. So that got me on this next leg of the journey, which all of it comes into what I do with men today. So when you look at those different organizations, extreme ownership, right? You got to take accountability. You got to do all those things to be a man. From what I learned in the Iron Council, you need other men around you. You need people who will hold you accountable and be on the same mission. And you really need 3 men. You need one that mentors you. You need one that walks by your side, and you need one to mentor, right? That's really the basic 3 people that you need in your life. And that could be 20 people, right? But you need at least those 3. I also learned that you need to be doing something daily in different areas of your life through that. I don't agree with the same areas anymore, but you need to do things daily in the 3 areas or in different areas. But then there's also, you don't do it for yourself, right? We were made to serve. So that brought me into the service portion. So if you straight line what I just said right there, what my guys, when they go through the program, we start off with the same thing that I had to start off with, and that's believing that I am a son of God. If I'm a son of God, he made me in his image, then I am divine in nature, right? Not saying that I'm the divine. I want to make sure that that's clear for the listeners. But in my nature, it's divinely created, right? First thing that I believe everybody drops off is that we don't make that connection back to that, right? Every man in today's world, I'm not worthy. Whatever the case is, they have all these lies that the enemy whispers in their ears. But the Bible has scripture after scripture after scripture that tells us what man really is, right? And every lie that any man's been able to tell me, I've been able to bring it back into scripture. Once we get past that portion, I believe everything's built in the Trinity, right? Whether it's your marriage, whether it's your body, or whether it's your temple, everything has this divine triune nature to it. So when we look at marriage, right? God, man, woman. And there's 3 different relationships there. When you're dealing with self, it's also 3 different relationships in there. And it's mind, body, and spirit. Fairly simple. But in the center of that is where we get emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. And then, of course, after we rebuild the mind, body, and spirit, then we get to walk into service, right? And we can only do that after we put the oxygen mask on for ourselves. So then we can go into service. So restoring faith, right? So it's called the fire method. It's fortify faith, ignite the man, reclaim the home, and then establish legacy is the 4 stages. That was a long story, Josh. Sorry about that. I like to
No,
talk.
I was kind of riveted the whole time, so I didn't want to turn it off. I didn't want to interrupt that, man. I'm awesome. I'm amazed because when I started Manlihood, I said I'm a Christian. That's the center of what I do. That's who I am, and I'm not changing that. But I have a lot of friends that don't share that yet. And so I said, Manlihood is not a Christian podcast, but I'm a Christian. So we're going to talk about it. If my guests talk about it, great. If I have a guest on that believes in something different, I'll let him talk. I'll disagree with him, but I'll let him talk, right? And I'm amazed at how many men that I've had on, especially in the past 2 years, in the past 2 seasons, who, like, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I don't even believe in all this God stuff. Look, here's an example right here. Look what Steve has been through. Look what he has come out of, and look what God has brought him through. Like, you can say whatever you want about the politics of it or the religion of it or anything else. I don't care. Look, Steve was a broken man and he found hope and healing, and now he's helping others find hope and healing. So if you're listening today and you're like, I don't believe in all that God stuff, just, well, here's proof. Here's proof.
I would even say too, right? I mean, pick up a Bible anyways. You don't have to believe in God, but it is a great moral compass regardless, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There is.
Pick up the book of Proverbs. Just read that and apply what you learn in that and just see what happens. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, nobody could have told me that this would be the way out, right? Nobody could have ever told me that, Josh, but it was the way out, at every intersection, right? I just did a talk at a men's group, I don't know, 70 people or something. And, I had like I always do, right? I got my signature talk sitting right there, and I'm ready for it. And I never go by the script, but, actually it was interesting because I like to say that God speaks to me with a 2x4 because, he talks to me and I'm like, nah, I ain't doing that. And he talks to me, nah, I ain't doing that. And then he hits me in the face with the 2x4, right? And I'm like, okay, I submit. uh, Everywhere in my life, it's been like that though, but I never could see it until I saw it. I'm getting ready to give this talk here the other day, and I had, the signature talk, I'm going to talk about my past and everything else. And God told me, you're not going to talk about your past. You're going to talk about seeing me at every decision that you make, and it was probably the best talk I ever gave, Josh. And I couldn't say it again right now if I tried because it wasn't me. Right. But the essence of it was that if you're looking for them, you're going to see them down one of the 2 paths when you make a decision, if you're looking for them. But even if you're not looking for them, if you look in the rearview mirror, you're going to either see him on the path you took, or he's going to be on the other path, right? But don't worry about it if he was on the other path, because I guarantee you he's going to be at the next T intersection as well, right?
Yeah.
He's every path he's going to be on.
I love it, man. That's the thing is it, if God is real, which I know he is. I don't just believe he is. I don't just think he is. I know he is. But if God is real, then he wants a relationship with you. He wants to guide you. He wants to walk you through this stuff because his business is taking broken things and making them whole. That's literally what he does. And he does it better than anybody else. I think about all the things. Think about all the things in your life, Steve, that did not bring you fulfillment. I mean, you chased everything.
Almost 4 decades.
Yeah. And none of it worked.
You know, none of it worked. But here's the crazy thing, Josh. This just hit me right now, but just listening to God's plan for me. I don't know. It's been 4 months ago. I walked away from my job, right? I made $500,000 last year at that job. $500,000. I don't know how we're going to eat in 3 months. I don't know how we're going to pay the house bill right now. But he told me this is what I need to do, right? And it's the most, I always lived in that prop, I was the provider, right? I was the provider. I mean, even up to 6 months ago, I was the provider. It comes from me, right? And I gave all that up. And it's the most peace and joy that I've ever had in my life. Because all that I'm doing now, this isn't my program. This is God's program. I get to facilitate it. And I get to watch men, I get to watch men do absolutely amazing things. One of the guys, he was on blood pressure medicine since 2007. And after 3 months in the program, came off that and his antacid, right? I got to watch a man reclaim his marriage and his family, right? I've seen these men go back to church. I've seen, I had one client in my last group who, at 20 years old, his father killed his mother. So think about that. He lost both parents in the same day. One went to prison, the other one went to the grave. And he was angry and bitter and carried that into his marriage. And, it's just absolutely phenomenal now watching how much his marriage has blossomed. They've been together decades, right? But now that he's been able to release the Satan's lies and replace it with God's truths, his marriage is just so much fuller now than what it's ever been, And then of course you get the great things. Like, I had this really, really shy guy. He calls me up and he's like, "Hey, Steve, I never thought it was possible, but she was sending me those texts." And I'm like, "What texts?" "Oh, those kind." That's great, man. I don't need to know anymore.
Careful, man. Kyle from the NSA is all over that,
Well, knowing him, what I think is it was probably, it went from, "Hey, little Johnny's gone band practice today," to, "Hey, what do you want me to wear on our date tonight?"
Right. Yeah.
I mean, just knowing the guy, right? It probably wasn't.
Yeah, but that's
racist,
exciting for him, man. That's exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's the most joy that I've ever had. It's just been awesome. So the journey's great, as long as you pick the right guy, right? And for me, that's the Lord.
So, real quick, I just kind of want to ask us kind of a specific question, because you've talked about it in your life. You've talked about it helping with these other guys. And I think it would be a very helpful thing to the guys that are listening. How can you recognize if something is a lie from Satan, and how do you know what the truth is to combat it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I really do get that old, cartoon visual of Satan and the angel on the shoulders, because I think it's a lot like that. If you look into spiritual warfare to start with, you got to believe in that if you're going to believe the rest of what I'm going to say. But if you look into spiritual warfare, he can't control your thoughts. He can put whispers in your ears, right? And we also have, if we truly believe that our bodies are a temple, there's something that's going to tell us that's wrong, right? You think about the pornography and different things like that, you know when something's wrong because you hide it in shame, right? Whether it's before or after, you know that something's wrong there. So it's being aware of those senses, right? Okay, I just thought this, or, we think it, but he doesn't control our thoughts. He just simply whispers in our ear, right? So we believe it's our thought, but it doesn't feel right. And we need to get back down to those senses. And we can't do it by scrolling on this thing, right? We have to be in tune with ourselves to be able to hear those. And the interesting thing is I don't know if you listened, I don't take in a lot of media, but I really like Christian rap. And I really like Ren. And I don't know if you know who Ren is, but Ren has this song called Hi Ren, and it's where he's like doing this battle, and it's, he's talking over here about how he's been, he's in the healing process and all this sort of thing. And then the lights start flashing and it's like he's talking to himself over here and he's a demon, and just goes back and forth. So look that up. But, in that one, and then God's Eyes by Dax, there's, I wish I could remember this guy's name, but, he talks about if he was Satan, he'd whisper in your ear and overcome that still small voice, right? And he's talking about how he'd just be so loud and anxiety and depression and this, that, and the other. And I look across the statistics of men, right? And I've looked across multiple countries. In the United States, there's 49,000 people who commit suicide every year. 39,200 of those on average are men. That's 80%. And if you look across the countries, it only varies 79 to 81. For the ones that I've looked at anyways. I haven't looked across all the countries, but I've looked across 15 of them, and I get the same results. And what is it with men that they get depression, they get anxiety, they're isolated, right? There are all these different things that are all lies of the enemy, right?
Well, I think about it, if the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? If he takes out you, he takes out your wife, he takes out your kids, and everybody, you know what I'm saying? Like
The head of the domestic church.
yeah, you're important here. And if you are taken out, everybody that is following you and looks up to you and needs you, I mean, look at your own life, dude. Like your father got taken out,
Yep.
and that affected you. And yeah, like we're a prime target. We're the ones on the front lines, and there's a reason why we suffer with those things. The other side of it is we're not allowed to. I mean, we are, but we don't think we're allowed to talk about it. And
Agreed.
And I think that's where that's why I really try to push for having these conversations and just like, look, this is what I'm struggling with, man. And even if you have to talk through the politics stuff like we did to start, right? What's bothering you? Have somebody you could talk to about it and get it out, Get
You
started.
can cut all stuff out if you want, by the way.
Nah, it was fun stuff, but
So something
go ahead.
else I want to mention though in that, right? Is we need to be able to talk about it, but there's a design to that as well. And once again, getting back to this triune nature of everything. When you look back when Adam was put on the earth, there's three distinct things that he was put here for. And it is labor, so work, leisure, resting in him, and love. Those are the three things. So it absolutely drives me nuts, Josh, when I go to these men's faith groups and we want to sit around and eat ding dongs, drink beer, and freaking watch a movie. Drives me bat crap crazy. Okay. So there's this thing that I've been doing, and I'll give anybody the format if they want to start it in their own areas. Men absolutely love it when they come to it. And I'm going to put a big emphasis on that because getting men to do anything is just a bear. But I do this event called Ruck and Rise. And I do it once a month, and it's just a free thing. We start off, I do a little bit of an introduction to a topic just to get their brains thinking, right? I have one of the men lead in prayer, just, just kind of general over the whole group to be, stronger men, that sort of thing. But then as we're strapping on our rucks, we're putting the weight on. What we do is when we put our weight on, we do it one at a time and we speak our intentions for what we're going to carry that weight for. So, mine a lot of time is, for a man who's struggling, it might be for someone's marriage, might be someone's kids in the hospital, or, someone, who just got diagnosed with cancer, whatever the case is, right? But then, we all know each other's intentions and we put weight on and it's an easy ruck. We take a 2.5 mile ruck around a lake because I didn't want to be elitist with it, right? But then the real magic happens when we get back. That's powerful leading up. But when we get back, we get to strip off that weight. We just carried it for someone else. We just gave it to the Lord through our intentions, right? And we get to strip it off. And that's something that we don't do as men very often, right? We don't rest in him. And then once we do that, everybody sits down, we drink coffee, and I do a leadership lesson, right? And it's a biblical masculinity type leadership lesson, and we have communication and all that stuff. But it is amazing if you keep that format to it. When you work, when you allow to rest in him, you can love on each other as men fully, right? It's absolutely amazing. I actually sat down and talked to a spiritual director, just as a friend. And he was asking me about all the stuff that I was doing. And I told him about it. And he took me back to early church teaching and how this resembles that and what have you. And I'm like, I don't know about all that, Matt, but, it seems to work. So I would always suggest working, resting in him, and then really start the talk, right? Take away the ding dongs.
Oh, Steve, I feel like we could talk all night, but I know I've got a few questions I've got to ask you. I try to ask all my guys this when I have them on the show. The first one is this: what does it take to be a man?
So the simple answer would be alignment. And when I say that, for me and all the men that I'm around, you need to align with God first. And then you align in your marriage, which brings that triangle, and then through service into legacy. And it's got to have that alignment, otherwise it doesn't work. That's a lot of the problem with society.
Good stuff. All right, let's say you can hop in a time machine and visit 10-year-old Steve. What are you going to tell him?
So if I was going to talk to my 10-year-old self, this one's a really hard one for me, Josh, because every experience that I've had in my life has built me into the man that I am today. But the one problem that I see in my path is the wreckage that I've seen along the path. So what I would tell my 10-year-old self would be, you have to do everything in the right ratio with people. We hear about it all the time in psychology. It takes, I don't know what they say, 7 to 10 positive affirmations to be able to run that credit card for one negative event. We as fathers, we as husbands usually have that out of proportion, right? We don't tell our son that we're proud of him 10 times before going, you know what, you need to work on this, or why the hell did you just spill that cup of milk, right? We like to lash out on those things, but we don't have the 10 positives before then to be able to take that on the bank.
That's excellent advice. Yeah, I know that's definitely something I wish I could go back for. Like, I'm in that age of parenting where I'm in the age of regret. You look back on the things. Yeah, kids are all grown, and so I'm making a lot of amends these days, and saying, "Hey guys, remember when Dad was like this? I'm sorry. I should have done it better." And
Yeah.
I think that's good. We've healed a lot of that nonsense. So
Yeah. The cool thing about that too is that there's different relationships as adults, right? My 31-year-old, the same one who took off out of my house and we didn't talk for a decade. We're really good friends now. You know, he came to the realization that I was a kid when I was raising him. And I, admitted my wrongdoings and apologized and everything else. Actually, so much that one day he said, Dad, knock it off. Can we just be friends? Right?
that's awesome.
You're forgiven, you know? And that was powerful for me to hear that, that you're forgiven.
Yeah, that's powerful. Steve, what is your best advice for the guys that are listening today?
Wake up from the matrix, right? Wake up from the matrix. There is an attack on your being, just like what we were talking about before. Satan wants you to fail, and you're allowing him to. Wake up from the matrix, start living a life of purpose. I just read some statistics. Well, I read them a few years ago and I re-looked them up because I had to verify them. And I actually printed them out. If I can, let me see if I can find them. Let me read some of these to you, Josh.
Sure.
Percentage of people who actually write down goals in this world. Guess what that percentage is?
10? That's my guess. I don't know. It's all a guess. 3.
3, right? But if you write down your goals, you have a 42% increased chance of actually achieving them. I mean, that makes sense, right? Just by writing them down. So, when you look at that, most of that's business statistics. And that's sad for business, by the way. But I also have another portion of my business that helps address that. So that works out for me. Anyways, if you think about that, it's probably less than 1% that people actually have personal goals, right? If you were to sit down with most men who aren't on your podcast, right? I mean, just groups of men at church or out in the community or what have you, and you ask them, hey, what's your goal or what's your vision for your family for 5 years from now? Where do you want to be? How many of them can actually answer that? Slim to none, right? And there's 2 points you need to know on any given journey, right? Where you're starting, where you're ending. Any one of those 2 points are gone, you're already lost. And that's where I'd say most men are. They have no clue where they're starting from because they seem to think sitting down, eating Cheetos, watching football games is connecting with their kids. It's not, right? If I got to wear another man's name on my back to connect with my kids, I've already lost. Anyways, I could go on about that forever. Sorry about that.
That's good. So that advice is definitely to break out of the matrix, and if you've got a goal, write it down and start working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plot a vision for your family, right?
Yeah.
Plot a course.
I like that. Yeah, you can't get where you're going if you don't know where you're at or where you're going. So,
Yeah. You can always change direction. You don't need to be scared of it. If that's not, oh, those trees looked really, really good from 5 miles away. Yeah, they look like they're disease ridden. Let's go this way. You can always do that,
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Steve. So let's say our guys want to connect with you. What's the best way for that to happen?
Yeah. So you can just look me up by name on Facebook. That's probably where I'm most active, because I hang around 40s and 50-year-olds. So that's just, I think it's Steve Baumgartner, 1975. So that tells you my age as well. Why I hang out with 40 and 50 years old. On Instagram, I'm at Real Steve Baumgartner. And then, of course, there's always the website, which is fireforgedleader.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure to share that stuff in the show notes as well. So if you're listening, you can just click the little more sign and get connected with Steve. So, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us. It's good stuff for us all to think about. And, yeah, definitely check his stuff out, guys. So I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Anytime. Steve, thank you. What a story, man. Thank you for inviting me into your life to hear your journey, the things you've been through, and honestly encouraging me, because we can do this. We can get better. We can overcome. It's good stuff. So you can connect with Steve, guys, at fireforgedleader.com. I've included his links and his socials in the show notes, so you can connect directly to him if you want to reach out to him. Make sure that you, give him some love, because this dude is doing good stuff. So we want to support what he's doing. Make sure, guys, that you subscribe to Manlihood Plus, our subscription service on YouTube and Spotify. Grab Fight Like Hell, a journal for men who won't back down. You can get this on Amazon. It's available now. It's in the show notes. Just click the link, buy the book. It's going to help you. 30 days of a journey through the stuff you don't want to deal with, but you know you need to. That's what this is going to help you with. So, also, don't forget our Facebook community, the Manlihood Man Cave. It's free, and you will grow there if you're a part of it, because iron sharpens iron. That's what we do in the Manlihood Man Cave. So, guys, I hope that you take every bit of fire that has been invested in you today and you let it heat you up so that you can burn bright. I love you. I'm proud of you, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for being part of Manlihood. Now it's time for you to rise up and take action. Join the Manlihood Man Cave, our free Facebook group, and connect with the other men on the same journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share that episode with a friend. For more, visit manlihood.com.